Hey everyone, this is my first ever top 10 YouTube video. Disclaimer, I have not read every single Star Wars novel, but I have read 93 of them, so I think that gives me a pretty good idea. If you have any better suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Number 10, Darth Plagueis. To start off our list, we have Darth Plagueis following one of the most well-known Sith Lords, the eponymous character Darth Plagueis himself, released in 2012 and written by perennial Star Wars novelist James Luceno, who will also appear again on this list. In my opinion, one of the best authors of all time from the Star Wars Expanded Universe, now called Legends. This novel tells the long-awaited origin of Darth Plagueis that fans have been waiting for since he was first mentioned in Revenge of the Sith. Moreover, this novel tells us how Palpatine became his apprentice and even reveals the surprise to Palpatine and Plagueis when they find out about Anakin Skywalker and his conception through the Force. One of the coolest aspects of this novel is near the end when we find out that Plagueis was actually still alive and helping Palpatine pull strings to become Chancellor well into the timeline of the Phantom Menace. Therefore, this novel covers between 67 BBY to 32 BBY. This novel also has one of the most badass endings in the Star Wars history, when Palpatine kills Plagueis, not in his sleep by the way, in true Rule of Two fashion, using Sith lightning on Plagueis while reaming him out for being a weakling who has forgotten the ways of the Sith legacy and its teachings. Number 9, Outbound Flight. Released in 2006 by one of the most well-known Star Wars authors of all time, Timothy Zahn. Most famous for his creation of the character Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is heavily featured in this novel as well. I'll talk about Thrawn in a lot more detail later, as this is not the last we've seen of Thrawn-based novels on this list. One of the reasons that Outbound Flight is so encapsulating is because we see Thrawn set in the timeline of the prequel trilogy for a change, interacting with a whole new set of characters, plus a few familiar ones. Taking place in 27 BBY to be exact, Outbound Flight follows a set of characters, including Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Joruus C'baoth on a mission to the unexplored reaches of the galaxy. Thrawn and his Chiss expansion force were always presented in an esoteric way, so getting this glimpse into their origins was exciting. Plus, we get the added bonus of hearing about an early Chiss encounter with the Yuuzhan Vong. We came really close to seeing Thrawn interact with Anakin and Obi-Wan before Palpatine calls them off of the voyage. Overall, just a great prequel to the original Thrawn trilogy. Number 8, Tarkin. Another novel written by James Luceno. This is the only novel in my list that is still considered canon. Taking place in 14 BBY, we get a long-awaited look into Tarkin's past. Ever since his amazing portrayal by Peter Cushing and his premature death at the hands of Luke Skywalker, fans have been wanting to see way more of Tarkin, and I don't mean as an android-looking CGI character. I'll leave this description short, but I highly suggest you all give it a read. Number 7, Shadows of the Empire. A lot of people might think that this is a weird choice, but for number 7 I had to go with Shadows of the Empire. Shadows of the Empire is a franchise that is definitely more well-known for the video game. Any 90s kid like myself I'm sure has amazing memories playing it on N64. The novel came out in 1996, written by Steve Perry.
Steve Perry, and it should have been girl.
It takes place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It introduced us to unforgettable characters like Prince Xizor and Dash Rendar. Prince Xizor is a sort of Tarkin-esque character as he is presented with Palpatine trusting him just as much as he trusts Darth Vader. He is the crime lord of the criminal empire Black Sun, which was basically ripped off in Solo and renamed Crimson Dawn. Really wish that they just kept Black Sun so we could see Xizor in the film instead of Dryden Voss. Shadows of the Empire were such an important part of the Star Wars universe that they even added Rendar's ship Outrider into the redone version of A New Hope. You can see it leaving Mos Eisley Spaceport. Anything that includes OG Luke, Lando, Chewie, Leia, Wedge Antilles, and Swoop Racing has to be on this list. Number 6, The New Jedi Order, Star by Star. This 10th installment of the New Jedi Order series was released in 2001 and written by another longtime contributor to the EU, Troy Denning. Landing in the middle of the New Jedi Order series, I believe it is the most important novel in the series, set in 27 BBY. For those unfamiliar with the New Jedi Order, it is the longest-running Star Wars EU series with 21 novels total. It follows a cast of well-established characters from the Star Wars universe and features deaths of several major characters, including Chewbacca and Vector Prime. Star by Star features the second most notable death in the series, the death of Anakin Solo at the hands of the Voxen, beasts bred by the Yuuzhan Vong to hunt down Force-sensitive beings. The Yuuzhan Vong themselves are immune to the Force, which made them such a formidable force to be reckoned with themselves. Star by Star also is the longest novel of the series. It details the takeover and capture of Coruscant by the Yuuzhan Vong forces. It also leaves us on a big cliffhanger, leaving Jacen Solo captured at the hands of two of my all-time favorite characters, Fergir and Nom Anor.
This is where the fun begins.
Number 5, Legacy of the Force, Sacrifice. Taking place in 35 ABY, this is the 5th novel of a 9-novel series released in 2007. This novel features one of the most notorious deaths in EU history, the death of Luke Skywalker's wife, Mara Jade, at the hands of Jacen Solo. This marks Jacen's true conversion to Sith Lord under the apprenticeship of his master Lumia. Lumia was first introduced to us in the Marvel comics in the 90s. Famous because of her lightsaber whip, she is actually given a very intriguing role in this series. Jacen Solo officially names himself as Darth Plagueis as well, which I actually remember there was a fan poll to name him, and I think I voted for this name. The other names were pretty bad as far as I remember. Another really cool part of this novel and the series is the inclusion of an older Boba Fett and his granddaughter Mirta Gev. By now, Boba was Mandalore again, and the Mandalorians were converting Yuuzhan Vong technology for their own spaceships and weapons. We also see a new established Jedi Council under the renamed Galactic Alliance, headed by Luke Skywalker on Coruscant, made up of iconic EU characters such as Corran Horn, Tenel Ka, and Kip Duron. Number 4, Dark Apprentice, the Jedi Academy Trilogy. A well-deserved spot within the top 5. I almost wish it could be higher, but you'll understand why it's not when you see the top 3. Written by Kevin J. Anderson, who also wrote Tales of the Jedi and the Young Jedi Knights series, my personal intro into the Star Wars EU. This novel takes place in 11 BBY, where Luke has now established a new Jedi Academy on Yavin 4 within the Massassi temples that we see in A New Hope and Rogue One. It follows a new character, Kip Duron, as he gets corrupted by the Force ghost of ancient Sith Lord Exar Kun. Kip Duron would later go on to be an important Jedi Master in the later EU. Exar Kun's story is also told in the later Tales of the Jedi comics. This novel also introduces us to one of the best female characters in the EU, Admiral Dalla, protege of Grand Moff Tarkin and equally as evil. Pretty obvious that the sequel trilogy took ideas from this novel for the corruption of Kylo by Snoke while training at Luke's Jedi Academy, not to mention that Starkiller Base is definitely based off of the Sun Crusher, which Kip Duron uses in the novel to destroy an entire star system. Number 3, The Old Republic, Revan. The author, Drew KARPYSHYN, never fails to deliver. This book was amazing as it followed Revan post Knights of the Old Republic, one of the biggest fan-favorite characters and franchises in Star Wars history. Most of us became obsessed with Revan's history after playing as him in Knights of the Old Republic, and the fans wanted to know as much about him as possible. I liked how they had Revan with his traditional wardrobe and mask on the cover, which Disney tried to rip off for Kylo Ren. The novel begins 2 years after the events of Knights of the Old Republic, and Revan is now happily married to Bastila, living on Coruscant. Other familiar characters from the series appear as well, such as Mitra Surik and Canderous Ordo. We also get introduced to one of the most powerful Sith Lords in Star Wars history, Darth Vitiate, and we get to explore the Sith world of Dromund Kaas, which was declared the new Sith capital by Vitiate after he relocated his followers there in the aftermath of the Great Hyperspace War. The best part about this novel is we get to see Revan reconnect with the forgotten memories of his past, discovering it was Vitiate who corrupted him and Malak during their missions to the Outer Rim. The ending is also a big cliffhanger and bone-chilling since Revan is left under Darth Vitiate's capture to be tortured and interrogated for the years to come. Number 2, Darth Bane, Path of Destruction. Another novel by Drew KARPYSHYN. I read this when it first came out back in 2006, and I can actually say that this is one of only a handful of books that I finished in a single day. The anticipation of this novel was very encapsulating for Star Wars fans, since we had already heard of Darth Bane in the lore of the Star Wars universe, and we were all very intrigued to figure out how he transformed the Sith from a vast army, called the Brotherhood of Darkness at the time, to the Rule of Two, starting the path towards Palpatine's ultimate takeover of the Republic. The exploration on Korriban, an important planet in the history of the Sith, and the headquarters of the Sith during 1000 BBY is also awesome. Other memorable aspects of this novel include Bane's journey to Lehon, the old homeworld of the Rakata Empire, where he finds Darth Revan's holocron, and of course, the Thought Bomb. The introduction of Darth Zana, Bane's apprentice in the epilogue, is really cool, and it sets up the rest of this amazing trilogy. Please read the whole thing. You have to read about how Bane gets his Orbalisk armor, making his character even cooler. Number 1, Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. And for my number one Star Wars novel of all time, we have the famous Heir to the Empire, Book 1 of the Thrawn trilogy. I'm sure a lot of you saw this coming. Released in 1991 and taking place 5 years after Return of the Jedi in 9 ABY, this was essentially the first EU novel ever written. This book is most importantly known for the introduction of the character Grand Admiral Thrawn, who has since become an iconic character in the Star Wars universe. Even though this novel is no longer canon, Thrawn has since been made a canon character in the Star Wars universe, appearing in Star Wars Rebels and in his more recent self-titled novel, written again by Zahn. This novel also introduces us to Mara Jade, a Force-sensitive ex-hand of Palpatine who eventually falls in love with and marries Luke. Other notable characters include Smuggler Talon Card and then Captain, later Grand Admiral Pellaeon. The concept of clones is also introduced to us for the first time in the series in the Star Wars universe, with a clone of Luke, cloned from Luke's hand that he lost on Bespin. The legacy of the novel is cemented as the first Star Wars book to refer to the galactic capital as Coruscant. George Lucas would later use this name as the official galactic capital. If anyone thinks the list should have been different, please give me your reasons and suggestions in the comments below. Thank you for listening.